The journey that broke me and rebuilt me. Warmest greeting from Ghost in the chart to all of you. The Holy Grail, everyone seeks it, but no one finds it. And yet, it's the very thing that draws millions into the market. A promise never spoken outright, but always whispered in every ad, every course, every red-lettered headline. Just find it, they say, and you will stop losing. They call it many names: the unbeatable system, the auto-trading robot, the 90% win rate formula, the secret method. But in every trader's mind, it's always the same just one thing: the Holy Grail. I once believed in it, blindly. I was obsessed, burning with a hunger so deep it stole my sleep night after night, just so I could optimize one more indicator. I used to think that if I could just discover the right formula, everything would change. And so I began the journey testing every model I could find, buying every promising course, celebrating wins after 30 days, building signal-sharing groups, even coding a chatbot boss to help automate trades. I thought I was evolving, but then, one day, I looked back. I was running, and the more I ran, the more exhausted I became. The more exhausted I felt, the tighter I clung to it, and the more I clung, the more I lost. I felt like a man climbing a mountain with no idea where the summit was. Strangely, the higher I went, the colder it became. The more I rose, the lonelier I felt. And then I began to hear something crack from deep within me. You know, trading is a strange game. It doesn't knock you out with a heavy punch. It bleeds you, trade by trade, while you still believe you're getting closer to the Holy Grail. But the Grail isn't there. It's not inside an indicator. It's not in a string of green candles. It's not in a $1,000 account that wins today and burns tomorrow. This video is not the secret that will keep you from ever losing again. I don't have that, and you shouldn't trust anyone who says they do. But if you've been running for years, if you've lost sleep chasing a new system, if you've wept in silence after thinking you finally reached the peak, then maybe this video is your first pause in the journey. I'm Ghost in the Chart, and this is the true story of my search for the Holy Grail, and what I found was even more valuable. I once thought I was close. I spared no expense. I sacrificed all my time. I flew to Singapore for a 3-day trading course, where they spoke about market mechanics and the secret flow of smart money. They told me, this is what the big banks use. Retail traders never find out. I sat for hours taking notes, asking questions, studying formulas. I returned home and applied it all and lost. Not because I did it wrong, but because the market doesn't care who you learn from. It only cares whether you're patient enough to see what others don't. Then I went to the UK for an even more expensive course. They gave me a complete system with 5 years of backtests and a win rate of over 80%. They called it advanced price action. I called it my final hope. But after just a few quiet weeks, the market changed. The system no longer worked, and I was back at square one, only this time, with less money and less pride. In Vietnam, there was a time when young traders idolized a named blockchain dream, a charismatic man with a massive community. Everyone thought he had found the Grail. I was invited to his private group. You had to pay. There were exclusive strategies, monthly profit charts, daily proof of success. But slowly, everyone lost hope. No one said it aloud, only whispers remained. His system worked for a while, then the market shifted, and everything crumbled. No one was to blame, no one lied. But I learned something. The Holy Grail doesn't exist in any course. Because if it did, the market would have died long ago. Trading is not about finding a formula. It's an endless conversation between you and your deepest fears. And if you're still running, I don't blame you, I was too. But when the exhaustion sets in, I hope you remember someone who turned back and stayed behind, just to tell you the story of a journey that never found the end but discovered something far more precious along the way. I remember it so clearly, the quickened heartbeat when someone showed a system with 8 out of 10 wins. The rush when I saw a glowing green account with a few confident captions. No one teaches you this part. And once again, I believed maybe this was it. Maybe this time it was real. I thought that if I could just have a stable system, something that won every week, life would be easier. I imagined living in peace, opening my laptop for a few hours a day, making a few trades, then closing it and enjoying freedom. I believed the right formula was all I needed. So I tried everything: price action, supply and demand, ICT, Elliott waves, Fibonacci. I studied like I was collecting fragments of a treasure map. Every time I lost, I didn't stop. I just changed methods. I was certain I was missing one final piece. And so I kept chasing, like a man possessed by something without shape, without sound, without substance. But I never stopped to ask, why did I need the Holy Grail so badly? Maybe I was using it like armor, to shield the fear that I wasn't good enough. Maybe I didn't want to win for the money, but because I needed something to believe I wasn't less than anyone else. I didn't realize that the obsession with finding the Grail was the very thing causing my losses. Because I wasn't trading the market anymore. I was trading the dream I had built in my head. And whenever the market did the opposite, I didn't admit it was right. I just blamed myself for not following the system properly, for lacking discipline, for not understanding it fully. But the truth is simpler. The market doesn't run on formulas. It runs on the emotions of millions of people like you and me, hoping that this time will be different. But the market doesn't care. It watches in silence and punishes those who still believe in perfection. The first was Minna, finance graduate from a top university, brilliant at coaching, statistics, and presenting. He had built a trading system that seemed flawless. An 83% win rate, fixed risk, back-tested over 5 years, with more than a year's worth of live trades. When I met Min, he told me something I'll never forget. The market can't do anything other than follow probability. 3 months later, I saw him again. His account had lost more than 80%. Not because his system was wrong, not because he lacked discipline, but because in a single night, the market became too volatile, and Min couldn't stay calm enough to stick to the very thing he believed was the Grail. Then came Can, the one who once stood on stage teaching candlestick models to hundreds of students. Everyone thought he had uncovered Japan's deepest trading secrets. But late one evening, he told me, candles react, yes. But I never expected my emotions to react even harder. After 5 consecutive losses, Ken couldn't steady his hand to place the next trade. Not because he feared losing money, but because he feared losing something to believe in. I still remember Dung, the one who declared, I just need one strategy. I'll follow it to the grave. And he almost did. When his system failed under chaotic market conditions during a period of economic uncertainty, Dung didn't pause to adapt. He believed that if it were truly the Grail, it should never be questioned. And in that blind faith, nearly his entire account vanished. Not because the system was wrong, but because the belief in its invincibility was. I've met many people like them, traders with more knowledge than me, traders more disciplined than me, but they broke too. It wasn't the market that broke them, it wasn't the system. It was the expectation that a Holy Grail existed, that somewhere out there was something so perfect it would free them from ever having to feel fear again. A good system can help you win 7 out of 10 trades. But one bad trade at the wrong time, under pressure, with tangled emotions, can destroy every rule you once swore by. And I started to ask myself if all these people, better than me in every way, were breaking down. Maybe it was time for me to stop and look elsewhere. That elsewhere was not on a chart, not in a book, not in a system. It was in a place no one ever taught me how to reach. I once believed that with enough discipline, anyone could succeed at trading. I thought that if I studied long enough, practiced hard enough, stayed patient enough, the market would eventually reward me. But then I began to see the ones I looked up to quietly disappear. One had been a master of price action. His YouTube channel pulled tens of thousands of views per video. His thinking was razor sharp. I once followed every trade he posted. He was my mirror. One day, I met him again. I asked, "Do you still trade?" He smiled gently. "No. I make money from YouTube now and selling noodles." It wasn't that he failed. It wasn't that he gave up. He simply chose peace. He told me trading isn't wrong, it just isn't for everyone. Some people are meant for candlesticks, others for cooking fires. That one sentence stopped me cold. Because I started remembering all those who once shouted about financial freedom through Forex and now run coffee shops. Those who once claimed to have discovered the unbeatable setup and now work in real estate or live in silence. No one lied, no one cheated. They simply realized at the right moment that trading wasn't for the majority. Because the market does not offer equal opportunity. It rarely rewards hard work. It doesn't praise you for how much you study. It reacts to only one thing: whether you truly understand yourself before you demand to understand the market. And I began to question myself. Maybe I was also holding onto a path that was never meant for me. Sleepless nights, days of red accounts, the hesitation before placing a trade, afraid to miss out. I looked around and realized I was part of the crowd, the passionate, but the lost. Until I met him, a man who no longer searched for anything, who didn't preach, didn't care for perfect charts, yet knew exactly when the market flipped its mask. He didn't teach me another tool. He helped me peel away the illusions I had carried for years. He didn't make me better. He made me quieter. I didn't meet him in a class, not in a coaching session, not through some noisy trading group. I met him in a small tea shop where no one spoke about trading. There was no Wi-Fi, no charts, only an old man who sat for a very long time and stayed very still. No one knew when he started trading. No one knew his past. One day I asked him, "Did you watch the market yesterday?" He just smiled, didn't look at me, didn't answer directly. He simply said, "The more closely you need to watch the market, the more it proves you haven't yet stepped far enough away from it." That line pushed me into silence for days. It wasn't about discipline or risk management or how to hold a position. It was about distance. Distance from what? Slowly, I began to understand. He didn't teach me how to trade. He didn't ask me to journal or backtest daily. He only asked me one thing: did you see the market today? Or did you only see yourself? That question sliced through every chart, exposed every winning trade, and stripped bare every system I thought was unbreakable. I started stepping back, not drawing charts, just sitting, watching the market like a river. One day, he said, "Don't try to beat the market. Just learn to know when it's telling the truth and when it's lying." I said nothing, because for the first time in my trading life, I didn't feel the need to add anything. I only felt the need to subtract. Fewer tools, fewer indicators, fewer expectations. And most importantly, I let go of the belief that I needed to win to prove I was someone. Since then, I trade very little. But every trade is clear. No hesitation, no fear. Not because I became better, but because I could feel the offbeat rhythm of the market when it was no longer itself. That's when I stepped in, not to conquer but to touch and retreat before the storm arrived. That teacher never handed me the Holy Grail. He gave me something more. He gave me a way to exist in the market without having to fight it. And that changed everything. I used to be heavily addicted to cigarettes. I made countless promises to quit. I said, "This is the last time," over and over. But every time I lost a trade, every time the market spiked, every time I felt out of control, I reached for a cigarette like it was my escape. When I met him, I thought he'd start teaching me about the market. I had my notebook ready, my laptop charged, a long list of questions about techniques, emotions, and strategies. But he looked at me, calm and quiet, and asked, "How long have you been smoking?" I laughed awkwardly. "A while, but I'm trying to quit." He nodded, then said one sentence, "Then you're not ready to learn trading." I froze. I thought he was joking or being harsh. But he went on, "If you can't overcome the craving for a cigarette, how will you conquer yourself when the market flips? If you can't control your own body, how can you control your emotions when your account bleeds for days?" I didn't say anything, but deep down, something shook. He wasn't talking about nicotine. He was talking about me. About the part of me that always ran, that always needed an excuse, that always needed something to lean on when facing failure. He taught me nothing for 3 weeks. No charts, no concepts, no checking what I knew. He just watched, quietly, waiting for me to step out of the fragile shell I thought was my willpower. And one day, when I finally quit, when I looked at a cigarette and no longer needed it, he simply said, "Now you can finally see the market." Because the market is not for the weak, but it's also not for those who wear the mask of strength. It is only for those light enough not to be blown away, deep enough not to be swept away, and grounded enough not to deceive themselves. I thought he would teach me the Grail, but he only taught me one truth. If you cannot master a craving, you cannot master a wave. That's when I began to understand the Holy Grail is not a system. It's a state. The state of someone who no longer lets the market decide whether they feel joy or sorrow today. You've probably heard that question 1,000 times, is there a Holy Grail in trading? And I know, like me, you've spent years chasing the answer. But someday, you'll stop asking, not because you found the answer, but because you no longer need the question. Because the Grail doesn't lie in a pattern, or a win rate, or in risk management. The Holy Grail is in the way you face the market without needing it to be kind to you. It's when you no longer tremble from surprise news, no longer lose sleep over a floating loss, no longer fear missing out on a perfect setup. It's when you sit down, open the chart, and no longer search, only listen. It's when you win without becoming arrogant, lose without falling apart. When you don't need anyone to know you're in a trade. Don't need anyone to believe that you're right. When you survive quietly and yet have enough strength to see what others cannot. My teacher never gave me secrets. He simply helped me return to the place I had long abandoned myself. Where the cravings lived, where self-deception echoed, where the noise roared every time the chart spiked. And he taught me one thing. You only need to stay silent long enough for the market to reveal its weakest point. And I, who once searched everywhere for the Grail, finally found it in letting go. Letting go of the need to win. Letting go of the desire to prove something. Letting go of the image of the successful trader I had carried on my back. Now, I trade little, but I live much more, not because I am rich, but because I no longer let the market control my life. And if you've made it to the end of this story, I believe something in you is beginning to break, so that something new can be born. This is not just a story about trading. It's the story of the journey to find something we all thought was out there, but that was always hidden in the way we live, in the way we breathe when the market is on fire, and in the way we remain silent but still endure. The Holy Grail doesn't exist, but if it does, it isn't meant for those still chasing it.